Here we go. We're going first with the world champion only, and of course, it's gonna be Shodo Joji. So in the Shodo Joji, you'd expect it to be very good against the Stride deck sets, but the problem is the combo is not really that good to begin with. You are only limited to 4 attacks, if I'm correct.
Yeah, actually, you have 5 attacks, but then your other attacks are very weak compared to the one that is called by Sorudoji. So again, sorry about the technical difficulty. So this is a stream for the BSF 2024 teams format for standard. This is what we think would be the best decks to pick for the teams format. Which we will be having here in the Philippines at around April 22 to 23. So,
Yeah, so that means it's also a very exciting time for the meta, right, Anjo? Because the triple drive booster will be available and outside of the time for the embargo.
yeah, so that's why we are very excited, and that's why we are bringing you this tier list for today.
Yeah.
So what would be the next deck for you here?
Yeah, of course, it's no question here. The Auto Slot Index, the number one deck right now in the format, the one that is the boogeyman basically in the Japanese Vanguard tournaments. It will obviously be dun 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 dun. Where is it?
Can't
find it.
It's spoiler. Okay.
Spoiler: it is Shiranui. What do you expect? It's just the best deck right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Shiranui is just so crazy strong with the crest, with restanders. It has everything. It doesn't even need that much resources to begin with. It can start attacking multiple times once it hits that stride turn with 1 CB and some Soul Blast. And you're not even limited to having to dominate any units, right? Because with Esperor Idea in your deck, just having a grade 4 is just enough to multi-attack win.
Yeah, that's the deck is just super strong. It doesn't have the ordinary weakness of Stride decks because of the grade 2 ride deck of the Shodo Doji. It
Yeah.
basically borrowed the Shodo Joji G2 to make its G2 game a lot stronger compared to the other ride deck sets, Stride deck sets.
So yeah, but this deck will be the deck to beat. That's why people are excited to buy the Angel Bracing Ladders in the upcoming not Stride deck set, in the upcoming Triple Drive booster. So yeah, if you are not playing this deck, it's either you're countering it or you just don't have 3,000 pesos in your back pocket. Okay, so why are you playing teams if you're not running this into in your team?
Yeah, and I believe like everybody here in CDO right now basically bought into this deck because they are expecting it to be the best deck during BSF meta. So yeah, that would be the number one auto slot in pick for us. And of course, number 2, what do you think, Anjo?
Second pick for me would be Prisms. Prism is the natural counter to Shiranui. Your first turn, you can just bounce all of your rear guards, not leaving any units to be dominated on the field. So your opponent's Shiranui deck is basically vanilla because it doesn't dominate anything, and his rear guards need you to be able to dominate for them to restand or do anything.
Yeah.
And in the second turn, you have your auras, so you can search your orders for the Angel Bracing Ladder, effectively turning off Shiranui for 2 turns.
Yeah, and of course, it has a very strong grade 2 game, and that's not something that most decks can answer with, especially Shiranui. Shiranui by itself is not as susceptible, but it still can be rushed down, and that's the main power of Prism, rushing down the opponent on grade 2 or even on grade 3 ride, and that's just the strength of Prism, just being able to power up your units, denying the Shiranui the dominate, and of course searching the Angel Bracing Ladder. That's gonna be a recurring theme here. The fact that it can search the Bracing Angel Ladder makes it a very good deck.
So how about the other Stride deck set, the
Yeah.
Luard? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so Luard I think has a place on the team. It's you don't really it's not an auto slot in such as Shiranui and Prism, but if you have a friend that has Luard, you can basically have it in your team and expect it to hard carry for the wins. But the main problem of the deck is that it's very slow because it's still missing that one promo card that is not yet available in English, the dog.
Yeah, so that really brings down Luard's power level here, because it really lacks a way to refill those hand cards, which is why it's not an auto slot in for us. Some players have been playing an order based build to give it an early game and to give it some sort of draw power, but really this deck just lacks that capability to draw hand cards, which P and V Luard has. This is why we put it as has a place on the team and not an auto slot in.
Yeah, because again, it's still very strong. The basically the win button in Drag Driver can basically steal games. Your opponent is not always prepared to face it, but the problem is it's relatively slower than you'd want it to be. It's not yet at its full strength. It has a place in the team, but I would rather have Shiranui and Prism first before deciding to use it.
Yeah. So next for me would be the other previously beta decks, which is Draduald. Draduald has a place on the team. It's still strong, it's still very good, but compared to Shiranui, its weakness in the early G2 game is very, very obvious. So this deck really lacks the capability to fight off those G2 turns, and you even can be rushed during your G3 turn. So this deck is weaker, maybe not really weaker, but this deck has an auto win con on your G4 turn, but getting to G4 is the hard part.
Yeah. So like, if you can basically compare this deck to any stride decks, but the problem is that the stride decks have just so much power behind their stride. They can basically fix those weaknesses by running more grade 2 rushes build, because the strides don't really have any, I mean, they don't really require anything from you. But the problem with Drag Jewel is that you need specific combo pieces. You need the Rockogors, you need the Maid, you need so many pieces that you don't have any more slots for tech choices. So that's the main issue with Drag Jewel. It's still a good deck. It can still rush down the opponent. It can still win on grade 4 ride. But again, you're still waiting for grade 4. That's the very main issue here. While Shiranui can win on turn 4, it doesn't have any issues by winning before that.
Okay, so the next here would be the other meta deck before the Stride set was released, which is Leonorn Vivace. So this deck is also another grade 4 deck, but the weakness here is that your grade 4 is not searchable, because it's not an actual grade 4, it's a grade 3. So while Draduald has the extra consistency in being able to run the Forbidal as your additional G4 search, Vivace really needs to hard draw that Leonorn card. And if you're running the mask build, you're basically running 2 engines. So you need to draw into 2 different things. So yeah. So while this deck is still strong, I believe, Vivace just loses those early game pressure that people are packing just to beat the Stride deck sets.
Yeah, so Vivace by itself is still a very strong deck, especially when it uses the Roroa ride line. But again, not being able to draw into the Vivace is a killer for the deck. I've seen so many people playing Vivace in our locals, and not riding into Vivace means your deck is just vanilla grade 3 triple drive Vanguard that can easily be perfect guarded, and that's a very big issue. It has the inherent weakness of needing to ride into that Vivace. It's not a stride deck set. It's not Luard, or it's not Shiranui. Your grade 4 is not in another deck. It's in your main deck, and you need to draw into it, and that's a very devastating weakness for the deck.
Okay, so how about this? What about Mushiking? How do you feel about Mushiking, Anton?
Yeah, I think Mushiking still has a place on the team. It's no question the deck just is a very good deck. It can restand with of course, the machine gun
punches.
machine gun punches. It can drive check with the Japanese Beetle. And of course, you're just running basically any good orders in the Stoicheia in Sorkea's pocket. So it doesn't have any issue. But of course, the fact is you're still playing vanillas.
Yeah, but personally though, compared to the other restanding vanguards in our list, the one thing Mushi King has for it is that your rear guards gain plus 10k power whenever they swing. So
Yeah.
that really brings this deck into another level because that plus 10k really helps your G2 gaming, which is again a common trend in what we are talking about here right now. That G2 game is very, very important. So this is why Mushi King is has a place on the team tier for ours.
Yeah, it was basically a good deck for how many years? I think 3 sets or 4 sets in the Japanese meta. So, and it's still topping right now despite the Shiranui dominance. But of course, it's still a deck that you need to have you're still running like 12 orders or 16 orders, and that you're basically losing in defensive pressure or in defenses, and that's a very big issue for the Mushi King. It's very good offensively, but defensively you lose a lot because of playing so much orders. But of course, it can still win games. It's still a very strongly standing Vanguard. Nobody can expect a triple drive, especially when you're using the Yi-Oh Wandering Souls. A very good deck, but just not enough to be auto-included in teams. And another one here would be my pet deck, Bastion. It's super strong against Shiranui. And if your deck is strong against Shiranui, you're automatically a meta deck. Bastion by itself negates Shiranui's dominate because it doesn't allow your grade 3s to be chosen. So by itself makes you already better than most of the opponents on your field. And yeah, so it's still a good deck. It's still winning. It's always been consistent, but also it's consistently having grade 3s in your hand, which you can't use to guard.
You don't need to guard if you beat your opponent when you ride grade 3. So that's Bastion is in a nutshell. I'll kill you before you kill me.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So what's next?
yeah, for me, I don't know how Anton feels about this, but I believe this deck has a place on the team, which is Greedon Mask. So Greedon Mask is very special as a deck because it puts their rear guards to soul. So again, it has an in-team way to counter Shiranui. You can swing with your Vanguard twice, and you can gain additional effects off of your Vanguard swinging twice, moving your rear guards to soul, and with having no rear guards in your field, which means Shiranui doesn't have anything to dominate, and makes your Shiranui opponent vanilla for that 1 turn, 2 turns that you have nothing on the field.
Yeah, that's true, and it's also a very good deck. You don't lose on 6 damage, you lose on 7. And of course, just very high pressure from the Vanguard. Multiple attacks. Just a very good aggro deck as well, even going first, because you can just activate the mask order, and then you can still just like, I swing 23, I swing 33. But the very glaring issue about this deck is still Shiranui. Because Shiranui can dominate your Vanguard, and if you're at 6 damage, what's the ruling, Anjo?
The count ability is now turned off, so you lose once you are 6 damage. So I think that's really the one glaring weakness. So if you are playing against Shiranui, you have to be smart about it. But you do have that 1 to 2 turns wherein Shiranui is doing nothing, and you're taking the offensive.
Yeah, so it's basically like a balancing act. It's very strong against Shiranui during the first few turns, but it's also very weak to Shiranui during the later turns when you just dominate the Vanguard and you just lose because you have 6 damage as the Greedon's effect is no longer active.
Okay, so what about next, Anton? What do you
of
feel?
course, another deck that is has a very good place on the team is, of course, Youthberg. What do you have to say? It's Youthberg. It's basically 4 attacks. You have 2 attacks from the Vanguard. It's very big, and you get like a million drive checks. What else do you want from a deck?
As long as you collect all the Powerpuff Girls in your soul, this deck is very, very good. But really, this deck is very good if you do get the pieces early. But again, it's one of those decks where if you don't get any pieces, you just straight up lose. Although technically you don't straight up lose, but you do have a hard time. So this deck is very feast or famine when it comes to the gameplay. But right now, right, the current meta is very focused on that G2 gaming. So being able to feast early on those decks that have really nothing to do on those first three turns is very, very good, and that's why Youth Perk has a place on the team.
Yeah, it's always a good deck. It's super consistent. The Angel and the G2 can easily put the Powerpuff Girls in your soul. But again, if you don't have Full Blast in your hand when you're ready to blast off, that's a very big problem. That's a very big issue of the deck. It has a place on the team just because of how consistent the deck is. But of course, it's still bricky. You're still running like 16 grade 3s.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you still have any picks for has a place on the team? I think I see one here, but I'm not sure what you feel about it, which is Orphist Mask. So this deck again is very strong. When you grind your G3 first, you can just straight up end the game right then and there. But again, this deck is very dependent on being able to place those orders. So as a deck, you're not able to play that Angel Bracing Ladder, which is crucial right now, I believe, to counter the Shiranui meta. But if you do get that first G3 ride and you get your mask first, you can just beat Shiranui there.
Yeah, and I think the main thing in favor for this deck being placed on the team is just how aggressive it is. Again, the meta is going to be stride decks. If you can beat stride decks before they stride, you're already a winner in my heart. That's what you want. But for the most part, you don't want your opponents to stride. And what decks do you use? The hyper aggro decks such as Orphist Mask. If you're using this deck and if you beat your opponent before they even play the game, you're already the world champion to me. But of course, it's still very bricky. It's not necessarily high roll because it's an actually good deck. It has won multiple tops in Japan, even in English. But of course, you'd have to you don't always expect to be faced against a stride deck because this is a teams format.
Yeah, that's really important there, right? Because this is a teams format. You are very likely to be able to face a lot of different decks, not just Shiranui compared to BCS or something like that, which is why you need to diversify your deck and you need to diversify your techs to be able to beat a lot because teams format are very wide open. Okay, so how about Charm Out? What do you feel about Charm Out?
I think Charm Out to me is a very good deck also, just because of how very big the numbers the deck makes. It's just funny numbers, that deck. Your rear guards are attacking for like 63,000. Your Vanguard is attacking for 73,000. Those are very big numbers. And it's gonna be always an issue, but it's not an auto slot in because of the fact that you need those combo pieces. Against Prism, if you compare it to Prism only needs 2 cards. Leyte and Celtic. Charmot needs like 5 million pieces to even do something.
Yeah,
but it's also a very strong deck when it gets those combo pieces.
Yeah, so I think Charm Out is just a very nice pick. You do have the issue of not also having that G2 game, but once you get to that G3, you are swinging 3 times with those big numbers.
Yeah.
And so yeah, most decks just can't handle those.
Charmot is just a very good deck in this meta because of, again, how aggressive it is. And if your deck is super aggressive, you're going to be expecting to be good against Shiranui. And if you're good against Shiranui, you're basically a very good slot in for the team.
Okay, do you have any other else?
Yeah, I don't think we have anything else. I think Leihan is also a good slot in the team. To be honest, I think it's a good slot because it's basically just Utberk at home.
Personally, I don't know how to feel about this deck. This is very new and it only had one top, right? In the
Yeah.
Chinese meta. But it is a restander and you don't have to search your restand. So I believe this deck can be good, but I really don't have that much data to go off of with. Compared to, let's say, a deck which was meta for the last year before it got hit, which is Willista, which I be putting in the comfort pick. While this deck was hit by the most recent ban list last year, this deck is still good. It really didn't lose anything much aside from Valchevlan, but this deck is still going to call units for free and restand and attack you 5 times in the face. So while it no longer has that hand card advantage, once they lost the Valchevlan, this deck is just good. And if you're comfortable with playing this deck, I really see no reason why you would not have this in your team.
Yeah, I mean, Willista is still good because it can still just pressure the opponents with restands, with the very big rear guards. But of course, still needing that gem. And of course, not having a cycler really just made the deck very weak compared to what it can be. It's no longer... it's a shadow of its former self. I can't expect it to be placed on a team, but if someone I know is very good with the deck, I don't mind with him joining with a team. But of course, the team still has to have Shiranui and or Prisms. But if we are basing on has a place on the team, I can remove Shiranui or Prism as long as we have 2 of those in the has a place on the team tier. But with the comfort picks, I'm not comfortable unless we have at least 2 of the high tier decks.
Okay. So another comfort pick for me would be another not yet. Okay, which is Chronojet. I believe Chronojet is a very good comfort pick. It is still a Stride deck set, right? It's still one of the more aggressive decks because of its ability to just spam grade once early on. And with the promo card, you can even call your, what's it called? Smoke gear?
Yeah, smoke gear.
Yeah, you can
Or
call your
smoke gear.
yeah, whichever this one is. You can call your smoke gears early and call those what do you call it? The draw one girl, GG. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can call your
GG.
GGs to amass that hand advantage. So while I feel like this deck is falling off compared to the new toys, which is Luard and Shiranui, Chronojet is still very good. It still has the pieces. It can still counter Shiranui and Luard, but you can really feel that this deck is showing its age.
Yeah, it's still a good deck. The Chronojet, again, the anti-sentinel is still very good, and of course having double Vanguard attacks, it's never an issue. It's always good when you have a double Vanguard attack. But of course, so many things has been hit from this deck, and it's no longer as oppressive as it used to be. It's no longer as oppressive as you want it to be. But it's still very good, and it's still a very good comfort pick. But of course, it's already like 1 year old.
Yeah,
So 2 years old around that time, and Shiranui and Luard is just so much stronger than this, just because of how recent the effects are, and that's usually how Vanguard works. The newest sets are usually the strongest.
Yeah, welcome to Power Creep and Feature Creep. Feature Creep. So what decks? What's next for you, Anton?
I think the next comfort pick for me would be Hexa Orb.
Really?
Yeah, I think Hexa Orb is a very good comfort pick. It's just a deck that if the player is just very good, you can just steal games. You can also just say it's high roll, but it's not necessarily that high roll because you're conforming. You already know the triggers. But of course, a very good player can steal games when your opponent is not ready, and I think that's also just the inherent thing of Hexa Orb. But that's a thing. It's just a very good deck. I don't mind it being on a team because it's still very consistent right now. Of course, checking triggers is always strong, and being able to check the top of your deck is always gonna be good in any team's format.
Oh, so I really don't know how to feel about that, but you are the Keter expert here. I personally feel she is more of a high roll deck you have, but I still understand, right, that it is a very comfort pick. If you know how to play that Hexa Orb, you are comfortable with playing it. But I do realize also that the weakness of the deck is you having to go first, right?
Yes,
Because you have to go first and you have to rewrite into that Aquamarine, because not having that Aquamarine just spells a lot of doom for that deck.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So for next for me, he would be Zorga Mask. So I really feel like Zorga Mask is still one of those decks that's very good. It still has the double RPD turns and then that fourth attack with the killing. The deck is just good, really. So, but it's not as auto pick as it was last year. Unless your name is Ray Perez, then you can play. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Ray Perez.
So I really believe that like, this deck is just good. It really lost nothing in the format. But you have to be very comfortable and you have to be really knowledgeable when it comes to playing this deck.
Yeah, basically, it's still the same issues with Mushiking. You're basically playing like 20 orders, and your power is mostly locked into the dragons. And if you don't have the dragons, you're basically just very small attacks. And the killing is your fourth attack enabler. So if you don't have those in the graveyard, if the combo pieces aren't there, it's just a very bad order deck.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the issue. But it's still a very good deck. It's very consistent, but you need to be very comfortable with with this deck for you to be able to properly make it shine.
So next up for me is one DE deck. It's not Dote, it's Jiva. So I don't really think this deck has been topping a lot. It did top quite a few times when BT13 was first released, but it has fallen off for a while. But this deck is still very good, right? So you just draw into your Strive Arena and you triple drive your Jeva and restand your whole field. So while this deck needs a million pieces to work, but if you are comfortable with playing this deck and you know how to conserve your resources, how to conserve your X overdress pieces, this deck is really actually good. So how would you feel about that?
Yeah, that's true. Java, don't discount Java because it did reach third in Worlds. So, of course, it has already proven itself to be a very good deck. But most of the power locked behind Starve Arena is a death sentence for the deck. Because if you don't if you don't get the Strive Arena, that's basically it. If you don't get Strive Arena, you're basically playing a very bad Jeva deck.
You're basically playing BT09.
Yeah, BT09 Jeva. And I think that's a very big issue for the deck. But if Strive Arena is in your hand, it's a very powerful deck, of course. But it's not an auto slot in because you need to be very smart with your Starve Arenas. And the moment your opponent can remove that, your deck is basically dead on the water.
So what's next for you, Anton? Which deck would be your next deck in the tier list?
And I think one of the better decks right now would be Prison. It's always been super consistent. It's a defensive deck. It also just won locals here, which is not necessarily a very big picture, but it just goes to show that the deck is still strong. It can pump out huge numbers, and it can block up your opponent's cards and denying them of any resources.
Yeah, as a stun deck, I think Prison is very good, especially when it comes to you rewriting those G4s, because you can just force them to remove 2 cards from their hand every turn, or make them use up their resources to call cards from the Prison. But this deck is going to have the same issue as the Stride deck set without any of the pros. So you have to draw into those G4s. You have to draw into those Seraphs. Seraph Pure Lights, I mean. So yeah. So I believe that while if you're comfortable with Prison, you should play it. But I personally would not choose that in a team unless you are very, very comfortable with it.
Yeah. The deck is still pretty good because you can just basically deny the opponent at 4 damage and just attacking with all your front rows with criticals. But yeah, it's still a very slow deck. It doesn't have an auto win button, and basically it's just a very good comfort pick if you truly know the matchup. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know if I should put this into high roll or comfort pick, but I really think like this deck really did not lose anything, which is Dote. So I think Dote is just good. I think the more popular decks as of right now for Dote is the defensive builds, which is running the Fushimi Madokas, the Garnets, and the Defensing Roar, which is the order to bounce those cards. So you can use your you can use your defensive decks more times in a turn by bouncing them with those orders. And having just a restanding Vanguard is just very good, right? So once if you that's why I was a bit hesitant putting it in a comfort pick compared to high roll, but this deck has been meta for like 2 years right? So you should be comfortable with if you are playing Dotes at that level in BSF 2024.
Yeah, basically, Dotes is just a very big stupid number Vanguard restand twice. It's just good. There's no question the deck is just good. The question is how comfortable is the player piloting the deck, because again, most of the power of the deck is on DOT. If you don't know how to play DOT, then you just suck as a player because it's haha, my Vanguard restands all effects.
I think we should probably put these in the comfort pick as well. They are basically the same as Dotes, which is just restand your Vanguard, swing multiple times, check your yellow triggers, which is Vanguard and Lutetia. So I think Vanguard was given an extra attack this BT13, right?
Yeah, BT13.
It did get Death Reaver, I think that
Yeah,
was the name. Yeah, so you do have that third Vanguard attack, but again, it's still check yellow triggers and you win game. But I don't want to put them in the high roll category because they have been here for a long time and nothing has changed for the decks. So if you're playing them, it's because you're comfortable with them.
Yeah, that's true. And Anjo actually forgot the Keter Dragonic Overlord
Yeah,
and
I actually left that out for you because I do believe Minerva has something else compared to those other three decks because it's not just reliant on the Vanguard. So I take it away from here.
Yeah, so basically Minerva is still also just a very big number Vanguard, haha funny, but it also has a 7 attack multi combo. And it's basically can kill your opponent out of nowhere, and it's still a very good deck. Nothing was necessarily hit from it, just the fact that you need the combo pieces. And again, that's a problem when you're facing Shiranui. Shiranui can steal your combo pieces. It can attack into those combo pieces. It can deny you those combo pieces. And that's the issue right now with Minerva because just Shiranui doesn't even need to dominate your cards. It has effects such as Esper Idea. It can basically have 5 attacks if it can basically have 5 attacks for a turn. But of course, if you can keep those combo pieces, you're 1 inch closer to winning the game. But the main issue I see with Minerva is still the fact that you need those combo pieces, you need to conserve those counterblast, and it did win BSF Chicago.
Yeah, but that was that was during the 2-week embargo when Shiranui was not in the meta, right? That's why it did win there. So I do believe that while Minerva is still strong, you do have that again 7 attack combo that Anton just said, but this deck just really lacks that power, right? So you can attack 5, 6, 7 times, but without that Persona right turn, it's just 5k shield.
Yeah, 5k shield. That's a very big issue with Minerva. Your 7 attack combo is not necessarily that good if you don't have all the powers. Minerva by itself is just 1 drive check as well. It's so much different from DOT. DOT always has the pressure of a double trigger anytime it attacks. Lutetia has defensive options with the grade 1 orders. Vanguard has triple Vanguard swings. And Minerva, the problem with...
You forgot one thing about Vanguard, Eldobret.
Yeah, Eldobret. Anytime we need to talk about Brandgate, it's Eldobret. The deck, Eldobret brings the deck up another level. But yeah, Minerva is still good. The main issue is that Keter OT sucks. You're forced to run the blue OT, and one defensive trigger can basically stop your 7 attack combo.
Yeah, so I think that's all for the restanding Vanguards, right? So I think I don't want to put this card as a high roll deck because it did get like 5 or was it 3?
Yeah,
3
3.
top 8 placements, which is heroes. So I believe heroes is like a very good deck. It with your scout ability, with your base, you can just pick and choose whichever deck you want, and therefore also compress your deck into all triggers. So while this deck did not really gain much from the current set, it did get an extra attack, and it did get more ways to set up that base. So while I don't believe this deck is that good compared to the rest of it in the field, but if you're comfortable with it and you know how to play those games with heroes, I think you should reasonably be able to win games with it.
Yeah, Heroes as a deck, just very good aggro deck. It can basically flush out the Stride deck sets with its super high aggro build. You just swing face with your rear guards and just hope that they don't get triggers.
Yeah, so I really don't know what else to say about heroes other than play it if you're comfortable, don't play it if you're not. Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's just a good deck because again, it did have a lot of representation in Worlds. So again, it's very good. The main issue is how good are you as a player in Heroes?
yeah, because we're basically basing our data on world champs, right?
Yeah,
so
world champs.
unless you're a world champ, you probably shouldn't play this deck. So you should probably also put it in the world champion only. I don't know, technically BCS champions only. Okay, so I think it's kind of obvious right now that most of these decks are in the high roll.
High roll. So I
So
think we're
maybe do you still have any other comfort pick here?
I think one comfort pick I have would be where is it? One comfort pick I have would be Magnolia. Magnolia is just good. I think it's just good. It just has very big numbers. It's fairly consistent in making those Dragon Tree markers. I don't know why people don't like to play this deck. It's just very consistent. It has so many support. You can also like put it between high roll, but it's actually just a very consistent deck.
Yeah, I think this deck just really got some power when
The mask,
the promo was released.
Yeah, the
right?
promo.
The one that can intercept from the back row, I think, or whatever. The Rhino one. So I also agree, right? It hovers between that high roll and comfort pick. But if you are comfortable with mask, it's fine, I guess. I really don't know. I don't have much to say about it. Anton probably has more experience with it, but yeah. So starting off with the high roll fix, play this decks if you think you're gonna check all the yellow triggers in the game. So, or if you feel like you're gonna win that lotto that day during the VCSF, yeah. If you feel like you're going to win the lotto, play these decks. So yeah, number 1 would be Gandiva. Gandiva got hit when Stigurna was limited to 1. It no longer had that turn 3 power it did before. It really has a hard time hitting that 5 bind. But if you win the high roll and you get 10 and you survive to up to 10 bind, you're straight up winning the game there, right? You have that multi-attack level. You have that multi-attack in the form of that G2. I forgot the name.
The G2.
Yeah, the G2s, and it's still Gandiva. If you high roll, you high roll. That's why we put it here in the high roll tier.
Yeah, if you have 5 and then it crits and your opponent doesn't have PG, hey, high roll, you win. And of course, in the same vein, Eva just having that multi-attacks, 4 attacks, especially with Obscudate getting a critical, and of course, the one and only Eldobret. If your opponent isn't prepared to face at least 2 Obscudates with critical, that's high roll, baby. You better win the lotto the next day. That's basically the deck. That's basically Eva. It's consistency, but most of the power is coming from Obscudate. Suddenly, out of nowhere, attack for 2 crits.
I think you also forgot to note here is that deck compression, right?
Yeah, deck compression.
So Eva is the queen of deck compression. You have that ability to decompress your deck of non-triggers with that blue research and Eva's effect. So once your deck is like very low and you know how many triggers there are, your opponent is going to 3 to fast or no fast that. So yeah, this is going to be the queen of high roll. So another high roll deck for me would be Omida Grujo. This deck sucks. It's not. People used to say that it was going to be like Dote, but this deck does not have a lot of support compared to what Dote has. But if you do get that triple trigger bind in your first G3 turn, you're just basically winning the game there,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like, if you get that 3 different triggers bind or bound, man, at that point, just take a scratch win. Yeah, you're basically winning. Your opponent cannot guard anything at that point. That's how high roll the deck is. It's good, but the main problem is needing all those different triggers. So yeah, that's basically high roll. That's the very big issue with Ominagusho. And of course, another one we have here is the king of high roll, the one deck that is super hyper aggro, Rorowa. If you're basically wanting your opponent to be at 4 damage as soon as you ride grade 3, because you're just slamming down tokens during grade 1 and grade 2, hoping your opponent don't get triggers, and of course, or basically just wasting their hand guarding it. And then just hoping to finish it off with the Momoke Lady Rina combo and with the Lady Rina grade 3 in hand. Again, hoping that your opponent did not get any triggers or is already at 5 damage, enough for you to just end the game as early as turn 3.
Yeah, so while English does not, I think Japan already has that
Yeah.
promo wherein you're able to search your extra persona, right? I believe, yeah. But English does not have that yet, so this deck is a high roll deck. But once it does not get that promo, it is a very good aggro deck, and it's very consistent. But as of right now, this is the BSF 2024 tier list, so it is going to be high roll. Okay, another high roll deck for me here would be Loro Lenroll. Again, this deck was oppressive in the early days of in the early days of Overdress, but as of right now, it really needs some help. But if you do get into that position wherein your opponent is at like 4 or 5 damage and they can't guard your 58, 68 Loro Lenro attack that can't be blocked by Sentinels, you're basically winning the game also there. So still Loro won't probably be the first lyrical monasterio deck I would choose. But if you really feel like you're going to win you're going to win the lottery the next day, play this deck.
Yeah, and another deck here would be the one and only Phantom Blaster Overlord. It's a very strong deck but all you want to do is hit those yellow triggers when Blaster Dark has Twin Drive. Hit that Blaster Dragon early into the soul for that critical pressure, and of course, give your Blaster Dark drive checks in the rear guard. If all of those check marks point you to a yellow trigger, you're basically winning the deck. This is also an aggro deck in the same vein as Roroa. You don't want to give your opponents any chance of breathing, but of course, the moment they get a trigger, okay, I lose.
Yeah, so again, this is going to be rush decks. I think it's a ongoing theme here right now.
Yeah,
That most
yeah.
of the high roll decks are rush decks.
Yeah,
So
I think
while I do believe that rush decks have a place on the team, you are going to yeah, sure, John. You are going to be able to they need very a lot of pieces to work, but at the same time the meta in the BSF format is ripe for those aggro decks to take hold, right? Because of the top 3 decks, which are Shiranui, the Jewel, Vivace, Luard, right? So those decks require having the turn 4 or having the turn 3. These decks have little to no play early on, which is why these aggro decks will thrive, and that's why you can play them if you want to. I would suggest really not. So, but you can play them.
Yeah, so like again, this decks, the Mayura, Snake, Ezel, you want to be laying down the hurt as early as possible, but one trigger is gonna stop those attacks. And at least the Mayura has defensive options, and that's a thing in favor of it. And of course, going first with that plus 5k. It's the same with Ezel, being able to Persona ride early. But again, just one trigger is enough to spell the end for these decks.
Also needing to go first. So
Yeah,
you,
needing to
you,
go first.
you have to win the die roll to win this with this deck. So yeah.
Win the die roll, win the high roll.
Okay, so yeah, again, also Welstra. So I believe Welstra should have been a comfort pick, but at the same time, it is a high roll deck. If you don't draw into those, the G2, what's it called?
Yeah,
again?
the operators.
Yeah, the operator one, because the G3 product cannot be played, and you having to rewrite into another Welstra is just too slow. So you really need to draw into your 4-off, otherwise this deck is dead.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's still a very good deck. It can basically lay down the hurt when all the pieces are in place. It's basically the Exodia of Vanguard. If you get grade 3 order, super maximum, I forgot the name, as early as possible, and you just like operate 3 times, giving your opponent negative 3,000 negative power, it can basically win you the game out of nowhere. It's very, very good. But again, the fact is you need those combo pieces, you need to search those combo pieces, and you need to operate. So many pieces are against it. But if you do have the high roll, the power of the high roll compels you, and you can win games with Welstra.
okay, so I think this next deck is a bit different when it comes to the high roll. It's not high rolling to be aggro. It's high rolling into hoping your opponent doesn't know how to play against it, which is Sienna. So I believe Sienna is a good deck. It should have been a comfort pick, but I think a lot of people right now know how to play against this deck,
Yeah.
especially early in the game. Yeah, so people, once they see that Sienna starter or even that Sienna G1, people will slow down and not place down any unit they don't want to lose, or if they have nothing else to discard for free. So yeah, so mostly the high roll for this deck is I hope my opponent doesn't know how to play against this deck so I can play my deck.
Yeah, basically Sienna it's a knowledge check. If your opponent doesn't have any knowledge to play against it, hey, I win.
Also MLB. Oh,
MLB. I think MLB for me is a high roll deck. It has all the pieces necessary to win against Shiranui, like we have said. It denies your opponent any dominate by moving all your pieces to the soul. It has a 15k base, so meaning your opponent cannot just dominate grade 1s because most of those attacks won't hit. But at the end of the day, it's still MLB. You're just 4 attacks. You don't have any pressure outside of a drive check and
a crit.
a crit. And yeah, you're basically just hoping your opponent to just be bored to play against you.
Yeah, so do you have any other decks that you feel like we were not able to join? So like and subscribe, maybe comment down some decks you feel
Yeah.
we should have put in the tier list. So, but this is what we feel as of right now. So, if we were going to pick a team personally, I would probably pick these two and then maybe a counter pick, which is in the form of something like a Bastion or a Minerva, which is something good, right?
Yeah,
So,
those
how
are
about
good.
you? What would be your pick if you were going to BSF 2024?
Yeah, if I were going in BSF, I would auto slot in that Shiranui. That's gonna be no questions. I'm not going to say I won't run Shiranui in my team. We need a Shiranui in my team. The Prism, I can say, yeah, it's fine, it's good enough. But if your player doesn't have Angel Bracing, he's a liability. If he doesn't pull Angel Bracing Ladder, that is a liability on your team. It doesn't matter if it's a good deck. The only purpose Prism is even in auto slot in is because it can search Angel Bracing. So if he doesn't have Angel Bracing, I'd rather just go with like Bastion or Youthwork, because at least those decks can like apply pressure against Shiranui. So the main team for BSF 2024 is is this deck Shiranui or does this deck counter Shiranui? So if your deck is Shiranui, then you're winning. If your deck counters Shiranui, then you're also winning. If you don't do any of those, you're basically trolling.
Well, not really trolling because Luward exists. So
Yeah, trolling. But no, but Luward in itself just has drag driver.
yeah, you can,
Yeah, drag driver is just, oh, I win. Oh, I push this button and I win.
yeah. So that's how we feel about the current format. I'm very excited actually this upcoming month. And also a lot of people here and Top Deck Games are very excited. So we have at least like 2, 3 teams who
Yeah,
are
I think
going
2 to
to be
3 teams. Yeah.
So I think a lot of them really are packing that Shiranui or packing those decks that can search the Angel Bracing Ladder.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm very excited. So that's our tier list for today. If you have any comments, suggestions, put them down there. And thank you. And see you here in Top Tech Games. Hopefully for the release of Triple Drive
Yeah.
Booster, so we can pull
Angel Bracing Ladder.
Angel Bracing Ladder.
So once again, this is Anton.
And this is Angel. So signing off. Thank you and see you next time.